Hello and welcome back to No Pressure English with Kevin. This is episode number 29. Alright guys, I want to talk about a topic that I think is really interesting. And when you actually stop and think about it, a little bit strange as well. Superstition. Now, I'm not very superstitious. I wouldn't say I believe in these things, but at the same time, superstition is there. It's everywhere. It's in our cultures, in our habits, and even in our language. So today I want to explore this idea a little bit. First, we'll look at why superstition exists, and this, for me, is the most interesting part. Then we'll go through some common superstitions, and finally, we'll look at how superstition appears in everyday English. So let's start with the why. Now, this topic came into my mind for two main reasons. The first one was because I watched the Rafael Nadal docuseries on Netflix. It's a 4-part series and I definitely recommend it, whether you're into tennis or just interested in high performance and mindset. Now, if you've ever watched Nadal play, you'll know exactly what I mean here. He has many very specific routines, lining up his water bottles, adjusting his clothes, touching his face, moving his hair. And he repeats these actions before almost every single point. They look like habits, but they're almost like rituals. And in one part of the series, I think it's around the 2011 season, when he's struggling a little bit, when results aren't going his way, he actually starts adding more of these little rituals, more routines, more repetition. And that's what really caught my attention, because it made me think, why? Why do we do this? And that connects to the second thing I'd been thinking about, which comes from a book by Professor Stephen Peters, The Chimp Paradox. He talks about how we respond to failure or setbacks. And he says that emotionally, we tend to do 3 things, but often in the wrong order. First, we look at other people. What did they do wrong? Then we look at the circumstances. What external factors affected the situation? And only at the end do we look at ourselves. But he argues that we should do the reverse. Start with ourselves. What could I have done better? What was missing? What can I improve? Then look at the situation. And only then consider others. Now, when I was watching Nadal, I started connecting these ideas because instead of analyzing performance in a purely rational way, what he seemed to be doing was adding these small rituals, almost as a way to regain control. And I think that's the key idea, eh? Superstition is about control. When things go well, we look back and try to recreate the conditions of that success. What did I do? What socks was I wearing? What was my routine? And then we repeat it. Not because it's logically the cause, but because it feels connected. And honestly, I think we all do this in some way. With that in mind, I'd like to turn our attention to some common cultural superstitions. Okay, obviously, a lot of people have personal superstitions, such as Nadal, but what I find really interesting is the fact that we have these cultural superstitions, and often it's not just for success, but it's related to the avoidance of death or the avoidance of bad luck, bad circumstances, bad situations. So let's start in Ireland with a couple of Irish superstitions. And I should note here that I'm sure that these superstitions are present in other countries, but they're just the first ones that come to mind today. So the first one is one I only discovered recently. My sister bought a new pair of shoes and she wanted to show me them. So she handed me the box and I put the box on the kitchen table and she immediately said, No, don't put the shoes on the table. It's bad luck. Now, I'd never heard that before. And my first thought was, why? They're just shoes. But then I started thinking, maybe this comes from something practical. Maybe it was just a way for parents to stop kids putting dirty shoes on the table. And over time, it became a superstition. But look, this is just my mind trying to rationalize this superstition. I'm sure that the history of this tradition is closely related to the fact that the bodies of deceased people were often laid out on tables when people came to pay their respects. Another one we have in Ireland is this idea that if a bird let's say leaves something on you. So if a bird shits and it lands on you, that it's good luck. In Ireland, we say that this is good luck. Now, objectively, that's a terrible situation. Okay, 1 minute you're having a great day, the next a bird has ruined your t-shirt. Okay, but we say no, that's good luck. And again, I think this is about reframing a bad situation. So maybe if a child is on the way to school and a bird, leave something on their t-shirt, maybe a parent can say, hey, no, it's not bad luck, everything's okay. This is actually really good luck. You're going to have a great day. Good things are going to happen. I kind of like the strange logic in this one. Now, moving beyond Ireland, there are some very well-known cultural superstitions. For example, the number 13. In many Western countries, it's considered unlucky. Friday the 13th is the worst day of all. Some buildings don't even have a 13th floor. Some airplanes don't have a row 13. That's how deeply ingrained it is in us. But then, interestingly, in Italy, it's not 13, it's 17. And that's my birthday, incidentally. So apparently I'm bad luck in Italy, which is great to know. And then in parts of Asia, the number 4 is avoided because it sounds like the word for death. So again, different cultures, different superstitions, same idea. Now, superstition also appears in our language. For example, knock on wood, or touch wood, or fingers crossed. We respond using these phrases when we are hoping for a positive outcome. I really hope my team wins. Fingers crossed. Okay, I hope for the best. Or if a friend has a medical appointment and they tell you, look, I'm really nervous about this. I hope it goes well. You might say, touch wood, or knock on wood, or fingers crossed. I hope it goes really well for you. These are small expressions, but they come from very old beliefs about protection and luck. And finally, we have the classics, like black cats crossing your path bring you bad luck, or breaking a mirror, 7 years of bad luck. The idea that it takes 7 years for you to become a different version of yourself. So it takes almost a life cycle for you to escape from the bad luck. It's crazy. But now I suppose just to finish, even if we don't believe in superstitions, I think we all drift towards them a little bit when things aren't going well. Maybe we start checking our horoscopes. Maybe we avoid walking under ladders. Maybe we repeat small routines, just in case, because we want to feel like we have some control over the situation. But in reality, some things are just uncontrollable. And while a little superstition can be harmless, maybe even comforting, we probably shouldn't get too carried away with it, eh? Alright guys, thank you for listening. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I'll see you next time. Take care. Ciao. Ciao.